Young Lady Snubs, the Alpha King. After stealing his parking spot, he claims her instantly. Solana Coleman had no idea that stealing a parking spot outside a Kroger in Columbus, Ohio, at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday would make her the most wanted woman in Austin, Texas. Not wanted by the police. Wanted by him, the man whose midnight black Range Rover she'd just cut off. The man whose wolf was now clawing at his ribs, screaming one word. Welcome to Gracie Werewolf Story Bank. The story you're about to listen to or watch is specially created for subscribers of this channel. And if you're a first-time listener or viewer, welcome to the Gracious Pack. So take a moment and get ready for this journey. Because this one will leave you excited, emotional, and full of life when you're done. Enjoy every bit of it. If stories like this resonate with you, we'd truly love to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell us where you're listening from. Virginia, Pennsylvania, Naperville, Orlando, or anywhere else in the world. It means more to us than you know. And if supernatural romance and werewolf tales hold a special place in your heart, please like this video, subscribe to Gracie Werewolf Story Bank, turn on the notification bell, and share this with someone who loves getting lost in powerful stories. Now, settle in. Chapter 1. Solana's Honda Civic sputtered into that parking spot running on fumes and sheer desperation. 14 hours of white-knuckle driving from Columbus to Austin. No sleep. No breaks except gas station bathrooms and drive-through coffee that tasted like burnt regret. Her entire existence crammed into trash bags wedged across the back seat. Clothes she'd grabbed in the dark, books she couldn't leave behind, a photograph she should have burned 3 years ago but couldn't. $100 in her checking account. A phone with 17 missed calls from a number she'd blocked 4 times. And one singular objective: make it through tomorrow without falling apart. The Kroger lot stretched out nearly deserted under buzzing fluorescent lights. Scattered cars belonging to night stalkers. Shopping carts rattling in the warm Ohio breeze. And one vehicle circling like a shark. A Range Rover so black it seemed to absorb light. Windows tinted dark enough to hide secrets. Solana spotted the empty space at the exact moment the Range Rover angled toward it. She didn't hesitate, didn't second-guess. Her foot slammed the accelerator, and her dying Civic lurched forward with a mechanical scream that should have been embarrassing but felt like victory. She claimed that spot half a heartbeat before the Range Rover could. Engine off, purse grabbed, door kicked open because the handle stuck. Exhaustion made her bones ache. Hunger twisted her stomach. But she'd won something tonight, even if it was just a parking space. Then she heard the Range Rover's door open. Not the quick pop of someone in a hurry. This was deliberate, controlled. The sound of a man who knew patience was a weapon. None. Every instinct Solana possessed screamed at her to get in the store, lose herself in the aisles, avoid whatever was about to happen. But 3 years of running had taught her something. You can't outrun everything. Sometimes you turn around and face it. So she did. The man standing beside that Range Rover looked like he'd been designed to make women stupid. 6'4" easily, maybe taller, shoulders broad enough to block out the streetlight behind him. Dark hair that fell just long enough to suggest he didn't care about looking polished. Leather jacket worn soft from use. Jeans that fit like they understood his body personally. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath. Pale gold. Not brown, not hazel. Gold. Like bourbon catching sunset. Like something wild trying to pass for human. Those eyes locked onto her and didn't let go. Her wolf. Silent since the night she'd fled. Dormant so long she'd almost convinced of herself it was gone. Woke up. Not a gentle stirring. A full-body jolt, like touching a live wire. No. She shoved the sensation down, buried it deep. Not happening. Not now. Not ever again. The man leaned against his Range Rover, arms crossed, completely relaxed. Like he owned the parking lot. Like he owned the whole damn city. That was my spot. His voice hit her low in the chest. Smooth, dark. The kind of voice that could talk you into bad decisions. Solana blinked hard, shook off the weird pull in her gut, and laughed, sharp and incredulous. You're joking. Do I look like I'm joking? The lot's practically empty, she said, throwing one arm wide at the dozen vacant spaces within 50 feet. Take your pick. His jaw tightened. Just a fraction. Just enough to show she'd gotten under his skin. I was here first. And I parked first. That's how parking works. You snooze, you lose. Something shifted in his expression. Not anger exactly. Something more dangerous. Interest. Like she'd crossed an invisible line and become something he needed to figure out. He pushed off the Range Rover and took one step toward her. Solana's heart kicked into overdrive. Her wolf pushed against her ribs, testing boundaries she'd spent 3 years reinforcing. You always this much trouble? He asked, voice dropping lower. Only when I'm exhausted, broke, and some guy in a luxury vehicle tries to intimidate me over a parking spot at 11 at night. His mouth curved. Not quite a smile. Something sharper. You don't know who I am. Should I? He studied her like he was reading words written under her skin. Most people do. Well, I'm not from around here. Just rolled into town an hour ago. So unless you're someone actually important, like the mayor or the fire chief, I genuinely don't care. That smile finally broke through. Dangerous and devastating. Not the mayor. Perfect. Then we're done. She turned toward the store entrance, forcing her legs to move steady, even though her pulse hammered in her throat. His voice caught her before she made it 5 steps. What's your name? She glanced back. Mistake. Those gold eyes pinned her in place. Why do you need to know? Because I want to remember who stole my parking spot. The words came out before her brain could stop them. Solana Coleman. He repeated it slowly, tasting each syllable. Solana Coleman. Then nodded once, like he'd just filed it somewhere permanent. Abel Leo. Great. Nice bumping into you, Abel. Maybe next time aim better. She walked into the Kroger without looking back. But she felt his stare burning into her spine the whole way. Inside, Solana made it 3 aisles before her knees went weak. She grabbed a shelf, crackers, cookies, something, and forced air into her lungs. Her wolf wouldn't settle, pacing, growling, demanding she turn around, go back, claim what's hers. Shut up, she whispered to the empty aisle. We're not doing this. Because the last time her wolf had reacted to someone, the last time she'd felt that magnetic, inevitable pull, it had ended with blood on her hands and a midnight escape that turned her into a ghost. She wasn't walking into that trap again. Didn't matter how those gold eyes made her feel. Didn't matter that her wolf was throwing a fit. She'd learned the hard way. Wanting something didn't make it safe. Solana grabbed a basket and loaded it with survival rations. Ramen packets, store-brand peanut butter, white bread, instant coffee, apples that were starting to bruise because they were on clearance. She did the math in her head 3 times before checkout, making sure she had enough left over for the motel. The cashier barely looked at her. Solana paid, grabbed her bags, stepped back into the Ohio night. The Range Rover was gone. Relief flooded through her so hard she almost laughed. He'd left, given up, moved on. Then she saw it. Tucked under her windshield wiper, a business card, black with gold embossed lettering that caught the streetlight. Abel Leo, CEO, Leo Global Enterprises, Austin, Texas. She flipped it over. Handwritten on the back, in bold, confident strokes. You owe me a parking spot. I'll collect. Her hand started shaking. She scanned the parking lot. Empty now except for a few employee vehicles. No Range Rover. No man with gold eyes watching from the shadows. But he'd been here, close enough to leave this card, close enough to touch her car, close enough to know she'd find it. Solana's wolf howled. She crumpled the card, threw it on the passenger seat, and started the Civic. It took 3 tries before the engine caught. She drove straight to the cheapest motel she could find on the edge of Austin. $49 a night. Carpet that smelled like cigarettes and despair. A lock that didn't inspire confidence. But it had 4 walls and a door she could bolt. Solana collapsed on the bed, still wearing her jeans and sneakers, too tired to shower, too wired to sleep. Her wolf wouldn't stop pacing. Because somewhere across this city, an alpha she'd just met was hunting her. And the worst part? Part of her wanted to be caught. Chapter 2. 4 days after the parking lot incident, Solana sat in a sterile HR office on the 12th floor of Leo Global Enterprises, palms sweating against her thrift store blazer, wondering if desperation had finally made her reckless. She'd found the job posting at 3 in the morning while lying on that motel bed that smelled like industrial cleaner and broken promises. Junior Financial Analyst, Leo Global Enterprises, Austin, Texas. The salary was more than she'd made in 2 years back in Ohio. She'd submitted her resume expecting nothing, just another application disappearing into the void with the other 47 she'd sent that week. The call came 6 hours later. Interview today, 2 o'clock. Now she sat across from a woman whose silver hair was pulled so tight it looked painful, dressed in a sharply tailored suit that spoke of authority and control. The nameplate read Victoria Brennan, Director of Human Resources. Victoria scrolled through a tablet, eyes scanning with the precision of someone trained to find weaknesses. Your credentials are strong. Top 5% of your graduating class. 3 years at Midwest Financial Solutions. Impressive performance reviews. Mare, she looked up. Sharp. Assessing. But you left that position with no notice. Explain. Solana's stomach clenched. She'd practiced this answer 100 times in the mirror, made it sound casual, unremarkable. Family emergency. I had to relocate immediately. Family emergency. Victoria's tone suggested she'd heard that excuse before and hadn't believed it then either. Elaborate. My mother was ill. I needed to be closer to her treatment facility. The lie tasted like copper. Her mother had been dead for 8 years. Victoria held her gaze for 3 seconds too long. Then something shifted. Maybe she saw what she needed to see, or maybe she just didn't care. You start Monday, 7th floor, 9 o'clock sharp. Report to Ciara Voss, VP of Operations. Don't be late. Solana's brain stuttered. Wait, I got the job? Congratulations, Miss Coleman. Victoria stood, extended a hand. Her grip was cold, firm, the handshake of someone who crushed things for a living. Welcome to Leo Global. Solana walked out of that building into the Austin heat, feeling like she'd just signed a contract she hadn't read the fine print on. But she had a job, income, a reason to stay in one place longer than a week. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe she could actually disappear. Monday morning hit her like a freight train. Leo Global's headquarters was a 30-story glass tower in downtown Austin that reflected the Texas sky like a mirror. Modern, intimidating, the kind of building that made you feel small, just walking through the revolving doors. Solana rode the elevator to the 7th floor, clutching a coffee she'd bought from a food truck, because the one in the lobby was $8 and she was still counting every penny. The doors opened onto controlled chaos. Cubicles packed tight. Analysts hunched over dual monitors, fingers flying across keyboards. Phones ringing in overlapping rhythm. A printer jamming in the corner while someone cursed at it. The fluorescent lights were too bright. The air conditioning too cold. Everything smelled like burnt coffee and desperation. And presiding over it all like a corporate monarch was Ciara Voss. She stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows, sunlight catching on her platinum blonde hair, white pantsuit crisp enough to cut glass. Everything about her screamed money and power, from the red-soled heels to the diamond studs that probably cost more than Solana's car. Ciara's eyes found Solana immediately. Assessed, Dismissed. Coleman. Not a greeting. A summons. Solana crossed the floor, aware of every analyst glancing up, marking her arrival, already calculating where she fit in the hierarchy. Ciara didn't offer a handshake, didn't smile, just pointed one manicured finger toward the far corner of the floor. Your workstation. Cubicle 42. Wedged between the supply closet and the dying plant nobody's watered in 6 months. Solana looked. The cubicle was barely big enough for a desk and chair. No window, no natural light. A computer that looked like it was held together with hope and electrical tape. Quarterly reconciliation report is due Friday. Chiara continued, already turning away. I expect accuracy. I expect efficiency. I expect you here by 8:30 every morning, not 9. If you can't handle that, tell me now and save us both the time. I can handle it, Solana said quietly. Ciara glanced back, one perfectly sculpted eyebrow raised. We'll see. Then she walked away, heels clicking like gunshots on the tile. Solana stood there for 5 seconds, absorbing the humiliation, then made her way to cubicle 42 and dropped into the chair that squeaked like a wounded animal. Welcome to your fresh start, she thought bitterly. The work was brutal, not because it was hard. Solana could do financial analysis in her sleep, but because it was endless. Reports that should have been handled by 3 people dumped on her desk with passive-aggressive sticky notes from Ciara. Data sets that didn't match. Spreadsheets with errors that had been compounding for quarters. Nobody offered help. Nobody even looked at her. By 9 p.m., the floor was a graveyard. Everyone else had gone home hours ago. Just Solana, the hum of the HVAC system, and the distant buzz of a vending machine that only took exact change. She leaned back in her chair, rubbing her eyes until she saw stars. Her neck ached. Her shoulders burned. She needed to eat something that wasn't gas station chips, needed to sleep in an actual bed instead of that motel mattress that felt like plywood. But she also needed this job. So she stayed. That's when she heard it. Footsteps. Not the sharp click of heels or the purposeful stride of someone with authority. These were slow, measured, the sound of someone who didn't need to hurry because they owned time itself. Solana's wolf lifted its head. She stood, adrenaline spiking for no reason she could name, and peered over the cubicle wall. A man was walking down the hallway, pushing a janitor's cart. Navy blue uniform, mop in one hand, spray bottle in the other. Dark hair, broad shoulders. Moving with the kind of confidence that didn't match the outfit. He looked up. Gold eyes locked onto hers. And Solana's entire world fractured. No. No, 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 Abel. Leo stopped pushing the cart, just stood there, watching her with an expression that was half amusement, half something darker. What? Her voice cracked. She tried again. What the hell are you doing here? Working, he said, like it was the most normal thing in the world. You're the CEO. Technically. Then why? She gestured at the uniform, the mop, the entire absurd situation. Why are you dressed like a janitor? Abel leaned against the cart, arms crossed. The motion pulled the uniform tight across his chest. Because people talk when they think you're invisible. They get comfortable, sloppy, honest. You're spying on your own employees. I'm learning who deserves to be here. His eyes didn't leave hers. And who doesn't? Solana's pulse hammered in her throat. That's insane. Maybe. He tilted his head, studying her like she was a riddle he was determined to solve. But you're still here at 9 p.m. on your first day. That's also insane. I have a deadline. Everyone has a deadline. Not everyone stays. What's that supposed to mean? Means you're running from something. Abel pushed off the cart, took one step closer. And you think if you work hard enough, bury yourself deep enough, maybe whatever you're running from won't find you. Her breath caught. You don't know anything about me. I know you're scared. Another step. I know you felt it in that parking lot 3 nights ago. The pull, the bond. There's no bond. Yes, there is. His voice dropped lower, rougher. And you felt it just as hard as I did. Solana backed up until her hip hit the desk. Stay away from me. I'm not going to hurt you. That's what they always say right before. She stopped, clamped her mouth shut. Something dangerous flashed in Abel's eyes. Right before what, Solana? Who hurt you? She couldn't answer, couldn't breathe. Her wolf was clawing at her ribs, trying to get closer to him, and her brain was screaming at her to run. Abel exhaled slowly. When he spoke again, his voice was gentler. I'll make you a deal. You don't run from me. And I won't ask questions you're not ready to answer. Deal? Her wolf whined, begged. Every instinct she'd honed over 3 years of survival screamed at her to refuse. But her mouth betrayed her. Deal. Abel's expression softened into something that looked almost like relief. Good. He grabbed the mop, walked past her close enough that she caught his scent, cedar and smoke and something wild, and continued down the hallway. Solana stood frozen, watching him disappear around the corner, her entire body trembling. Because she'd just made a deal with an alpha. And deals with alphas always came with a price. But 300 miles away in Columbus, Ohio, a phone call was being made. A name was being confirmed. And someone who'd been hunting Solana Coleman for 3 long years had just gotten the only lead they needed. Chapter 3. By Friday afternoon, Solana had survived her first week at Leo Global through sheer spite and caffeine. Ciara had weaponized every hour, burying Solana under reports that should have been distributed across 3 analysts, rejecting spreadsheets for formatting issues that didn't exist, standing over her cubicle at random intervals, arms crossed, waiting for her to crack. But Solana didn't crack. She'd learned a long time ago that the only way to survive people who wanted you gone was to be undeniably good at what they couldn't do themselves. The quarterly reconciliation report hit Ciara's desk at 4:55 p.m. 300 pages of cross-referenced data, error-free projections, and analysis so thorough it bordered on aggressive. Ciara read it in silence, lips pressed into a bloodless line. When she finally looked up, her expression was the corporate equivalent of swallowing glass. This is acceptable. Not good, not impressive. Acceptable. Solana kept her face neutral. Thank you. Don't let it inflate your ego, Coleman. You're still the newest hire on this floor, which means you're still expendable. Ciara closed the file with more force than necessary. Enjoy your weekend. Translation. I'll find another way to break you on Monday. Solana walked out of Leo Global at 5:47 p.m. with her feet screaming in cheap heels and her brain feeling like someone had taken a cheese grater to it. She needed food, sleep, maybe both simultaneously. But first, she needed coffee that didn't taste like it had been brewed in a machine older than she was. 2 blocks from the office, she found it. A hole-in-the-wall cafe called Brewhaven with mismatched chairs, exposed brick walls, and a chalkboard menu written in handwriting so artistic it was almost illegible. The kind of place where the baristas had sleeve tattoos and opinions about water temperature. Solana ordered black coffee because adding milk and sugar felt like admitting weakness, then collapsed into a corner booth that gave her a clear view of the door. Old habit. Always know your exits. She pulled out her phone, stared at the screen, then shoved it back in her purse. 17 missed calls from the blocked number. 12 voicemails she'd never listened to. A text from an unknown area code that just said, "We're getting closer." Her hand trembled as she wrapped it around the coffee cup. That's when the door opened and Abel Leo walked in. Not in the janitor's uniform. Not in some power suit designed to intimidate. Just dark jeans that fit like they'd been made for him, a black t-shirt that showed off arms built for work, not show, and a leather jacket slung over one shoulder like an afterthought. He looked human, accessible, devastating. Their eyes met across the cafe, and Solana watched his expression shift from surprise to something that looked like inevitability. Before she could decide whether to run or stay, Abel crossed the room in 4 strides and slid into the seat across from her without asking permission. "Are you stalking me now?" Solana asked, forcing her voice steady. "This is my coffee shop." Abel leaned back, completely relaxed. "I've been coming here 5 years. Same booth when it's available. Black coffee, no sugar, no cream. The barista knows my order before I walk in the door." "How convenient for you, isn't it?" His eyes dropped to her cup. "Black coffee, no sugar, no cream." "So?" "So that's exactly how I take mine." The corner of his mouth lifted. "We have something in common." Solana snorted. An inelegant sound she immediately regretted. "Wow! Matching coffee orders. We're practically soulmates." "Careful, Solana. Keep talking like that, and you might actually start liking me." "I wouldn't hold your breath." But she was smiling, against every instinct telling her to shut this down, to maintain distance, to remember what happened last time she let someone get close. She was smiling. They sat in silence for a moment, not uncomfortable, almost easy. The cafe hummed around them with the espresso machine hissing and indie music playing low enough to feel like atmosphere instead of noise. Then Abel leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice dropping into a register that felt too intimate for a public space. "Why did you leave Ohio?" The smile died on Solana's face. "That's not your business. It is when you're working for my company." "I work for Ciara." "Ciara works for me, which means you work for me, which means I have a responsibility to know if one of my employees is." "Is what?" Solana cut him off, voice sharper than she intended. "Running from something? Hiding? You've decided that about me based on what? A parking lot encounter and the fact that I stay late to finish my work?" "Based on the way you look at exits," Abel said quietly. "The way you flinch when someone comes up behind you. The way you're gripping that coffee cup right now like it's the only thing keeping you anchored." The cup trembled in her grasp before she consciously relaxed her fingers. "You're making assumptions about someone you don't understand." "No, but I recognize someone who's been hunted." His gold eyes held hers with an intensity that made her chest tight. "Because I've been doing the hunting long enough to know what prey looks like." Her wolf stirred, not in fear, but in recognition. "I came to Austin for a fresh start," Solana said, each word carefully measured. "That's all you need to know?" "Fresh start from what?" "A life that wasn't working." "That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting." Abel studied her like he was reading a language only he understood. "You're hiding from someone. Someone who scares you enough that you packed everything you own into garbage bags and drove 14 hours without stopping." Her heart hammered. "How do you, Your car." "I saw it in the parking garage. Ohio plates. Back seat full of black trash bags. That's not a planned move, Solana. That's an escape." She stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. "I need to go." "Solana. Thanks for the coffee shop interrogation. Really capped off a perfect first week." She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, vision tunneling, pulse roaring in her ears. But Abel's voice stopped her before she made it 3 steps. "I'm not your enemy." She turned back, hating herself for it. "Then what are you?" "Someone who wants to help." "I don't need help." "Everyone needs help." Abel stood, hands in his pockets, expression open in a way that made him look younger, vulnerable, especially people who've convinced themselves they don't. Solana's throat closed up. For one terrible second, she wanted to tell him everything, wanted to unload 3 years of running and fear and exhaustion onto someone strong enough to carry it. But she'd made that mistake before. And it had nearly killed her. "Not from you," she whispered. Then she walked out into the Austin heat, leaving her coffee unfinished, and Abel Leo watching her go with an expression that looked too much like understanding. Outside, Solana made it half a block before her legs gave out. She leaned against a brick wall, forcing air into her lungs, fighting the panic crawling up her spine. Her wolf was howling, not in fear, in frustration, because for the first time in 3 years, it had found someone who didn't feel like a threat. Someone who felt like home. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. Because Solana Coleman couldn't afford a home. Not when the people hunting her would burn it down just to watch her suffer. 300 miles away in Columbus, Ohio, Garrett Thorne hung up his phone and smiled. His contact in Austin had just confirmed it. Solana Coleman, working at Leo Global Enterprises, living in some rat hole motel on the south side, alone, unprotected. And in 3 days, Garrett would be on a plane to Texas. Because Solana belonged to him, she'd always belonged to him. And it was time to bring her home. Chapter 4. Monday morning, Solana walked into Leo Global and felt it immediately. The shift in atmospheric pressure that happens when you've become the subject of office gossip. Eyes tracked her from the elevator to the 7th floor. Conversations stopped mid-sentence when she passed. Someone whispered something behind cupped hands, and 3 people turned to look at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed hostility. Her stomach twisted. She made it to her cubicle, except it wasn't her cubicle anymore. Someone had moved her files, stacked them in cardboard boxes like she was already being evicted. Her computer screen was dark, email notification glowing. Subject: mandatory all-staff meeting. 10 a.m. executive conference room. Attendance is not optional. Solana's hands went cold. All-staff meetings meant one of 2 things. Someone was getting promoted into a position that would make them insufferable, or someone was getting fired in front of everyone as a warning. She'd been here 1 week. This couldn't be good. By 9:55 a.m., the executive conference room was standing room only. Solana squeezed in near the back, trying to make herself invisible against the wall. The room reeked of expensive cologne, anxiety, and the particular brand of tension that came from not knowing if you still had a job in the next 10 minutes. Analysts clustered in nervous groups. Managers stood with arms crossed, faces carefully neutral. VPs occupied the chairs closest to the head of the table like they were claiming territory. And Ciara Voss sat front and center, spine straight, white suit practically glowing, expression radiating confidence. She looked like someone about to be handed the keys to the kingdom. Then the door opened. Abel Leo walked in. Not in a janitor's uniform, not in casual jeans. In a charcoal suit tailored so precisely it looked like it had been engineered rather than sewn. Crisp white shirt, no tie. Top button undone, just enough to suggest he didn't need formality to command respect. He moved like he owned gravity. Every person in that room straightened, stopped breathing, waited. Abel took his position at the head of the conference table, hands resting casually on the back of the chair, gold eyes scanning the room with the kind of assessment that made people remember every mistake they'd ever made. When he spoke, his voice carried without effort. Good morning. I know there's been speculation about leadership restructuring. I'm here to end that speculation. The room held its collective breath. Effective immediately, I'm making changes to our operational structure. Some of you are being moved to positions that better utilize your strengths. Others are being promoted based on merit and performance. Ciara's smile widened fractionally. Abel's gaze landed on her. Ciara Voss. She stood, smoothing her suit, preparing to accept whatever accolade was coming. You're being placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation into financial irregularities within your department. The room detonated. Gasps, whispers. Someone's phone clattered to the floor. Ciara's face drained of color so fast Solana thought she might pass out. That's absolutely ridiculous. I demand to know what irregularities, embezzlement, falsified budget reports, misallocation of departmental funds. Abel's tone didn't change. Calm, clinical, devastating. You'll meet with HR and our legal team this afternoon. Security will escort you from the building immediately following this meeting. Two security guards materialized in the doorway, like they'd been waiting for their cue. Ciara's hands shook. Rage twisted her features into something ugly. This is a setup. You can't. I've given this company 6 years. 6 years of stealing from it. Abel's eyes were merciless. We're done here, Miss Voss. Ciara looked around the room wildly, searching for allies. Found none. Everyone had suddenly become very interested in their shoes. Her gaze locked on Solana. And in that moment, Solana saw it. Pure, concentrated hatred. The promise of retaliation. Then Ciara turned and walked out, heels clicking like gunshots, security flanking her like an honor guard for the condemned. The room erupted in whispers the second she was gone. Abel let it go for exactly 5 seconds. Then he raised one hand. Silence fell like a guillotine. Now for the promotions. His eyes swept the room, landed, held. Solana Coleman. Every head swiveled. Solana's vision tunneled. Blood roared in her ears. No, 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 no. You're being promoted to senior financial strategist. Effective immediately. You'll report directly to me. See me in my office after this meeting. The room exploded. Analysts turned to stare at her, with expressions ranging from shock to fury to schadenfreude. Someone muttered something about 1 week and unbelievable. A woman in the second row whispered to her neighbor, loud enough for half the room to hear, "Guess we know how she really got that promotion." Solana couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't process what had just happened. Abel dismissed the meeting with a single sentence. People filed out in clusters, throwing looks over their shoulders at her. Some curious, most hostile, all calculating what this meant for them. Within 30 seconds, the room was empty, except for Solana and Abel. The door clicked shut. Solana stayed frozen by the window, staring at the Austin skyline, but not seeing it. Her reflection in the glass looked pale, terrified. Behind her, Abel's footsteps approached, stopped. "You set me up." Her voice came out hollow. "I promoted you based on merit. You made me a target." She turned, and the look on his face, careful neutrality masking something fiercer, nearly broke her. "Everyone in that room thinks I slept with you to get this job. Let them think whatever they want." "Easy for you to say," her voice cracked. "You're the Alpha King of Texas. You run this company, you run the pack, you run everything. I'm just—" She stopped, realizing what she'd almost said. Abel's expression sharpened. "You're just what?" "Nothing. Forget it." "You were going to say you're just a half-blood." His voice dropped, gentle, dangerous. "Lunar lineage. Old magic running through your veins that you've spent years trying to pretend doesn't exist." Solana's breath stopped. "How do you know that?" "I've known since the parking lot. Since I got within 10 feet of you and my wolf recognized what you were trying so hard to hide." He took a step closer. "You smell like moonlight, and winter, and power you're terrified to use." Tears burned her eyes. She blinked them back furiously. "I'm not trying to hide anything." "Yes, you are. You're trying to be small, invisible, human." Another step. "But you're not human, Solana, and you never will be." "You don't know me." Her voice broke on the last word. "Then let me." Abel closed the distance between them until she could feel the heat radiating off him, until she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "I don't care what pack you ran from. I don't care what they did to make you so afraid of your own power that you'd rather work yourself to death in a cubicle than admit what you are. Stop. All I care about is that you're here, now, and you're mine." "I'm not." "You felt it." His voice dropped to a growl that resonated in her chest. "In that parking lot, in the coffee shop, every time I get near you, the bond, the pull, You can lie to yourself, but you can't lie to me. Her wolf threw itself against her ribs, howling in agreement, begging her to submit, to accept, to claim. And Solana realized with devastating clarity that she was out of moves. She could keep running, pack another bag, disappear in the night, find another city, another name, another life built on lies. Or she could stay and risk everything she'd fought so hard to protect. I need time, she whispered. Abel's jaw tightened. Muscle jumped beneath his skin. How much? I don't know. For a moment, she thought he'd argue, push, demand an answer she didn't have. Instead, he stepped back, put distance between them that felt like miles. Then take what you need, I'll wait. For how long? As long as it takes. He moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. But know this, Solana. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not giving up. And I'm sure as hell not letting whatever you're running from take you away from me. Abel. His name left her lips before she could stop it. He turned back. Why me? The question came out broken, raw. You could have anyone, someone from a good pack, someone whose bloodline isn't. She gestured helplessly at herself. Why choose this? Abel's eyes blazed gold. Because the moment I saw you, exhausted, furious, stealing a parking spot like it was the last piece of solid ground in a world trying to drown you, my wolf knew. And I've spent my entire life trusting my wolf more than I trust anything else. Then he walked out. And Solana collapsed into the nearest chair, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Because Abel Leo had just claimed her in his company. And 300 miles away, someone had just gotten the phone call they'd been waiting 3 years to receive. Shara Voss sat in her car in the parking garage, hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel, mascara running in black streams down her face. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. What? The voice on the other end was male, cold, patient. I heard you have information about Solana Coleman. Ciara's lips curled into something savage. I know everything about her, and I know exactly who's looking for her. Good, Garrett Thorne said. Then let's talk about revenge. Chapter 5. Solana's past had a name. Garrett Thorne. Beta of the Northern Ohio Pack. Second in command to an alpha who ruled through fear and kept his wolves in line with violence that was always justified, always necessary, always for the good of the pack. Garrett was tall, 6'2" of lean muscle and controlled brutality. Dark hair kept military short. Eyes like chips of obsidian that reflected nothing back. He wore expensive suits now, had traded his pack enforcer reputation for a corporate consulting firm that laundered money for wolves who needed their finances to look legitimate. But underneath the polish, he was still the same man who'd cornered Solana 3 years ago and told her she didn't have a choice about who she belonged to. And he'd been searching for her ever since. When Ciara Voss called him, freshly humiliated, career destroyed, rage looking for a target, she had no idea she was handing a loaded gun to someone who'd been waiting years to pull the trigger. I found her, Ciara said, voice dripping satisfaction. Your little runaway wolf, Solana Coleman. She's in Austin working for Leo Global. Silence on the other end. Then, you're certain? Saw her myself. Brown hair, green eyes, half-blood stench she tries to cover with cheap perfume. It's her. Send me everything. Photos, address, work schedule. What's in it for me? Garrett's laugh was cold enough to frost glass. You want Abel Leo to suffer? I'll make sure Solana Coleman destroys him from the inside out. That enough revenge for you? Ciara's smile could have cut diamonds. That'll do perfectly. 3 days later, Garrett Thorne walked into Leo Global's downtown headquarters, like he belonged there. Designer suit, charcoal gray, probably Italian, leather briefcase. Confident stride of a man who'd never been told no in his life and wouldn't recognize the word if he heard it. He approached the reception desk, where a young woman with perfect makeup and a practiced smile looked up. Good morning. Welcome to Leo Global. Do you have an appointment? I'm here to see Solana Coleman. Personal matter. The receptionist's smile faltered slightly. Let me check if she's available. She picked up the phone, pressed a button. Miss Coleman, there's a gentleman here to see you. Says it's personal. Pause. His name is Garrett Thorne, he supplied smoothly. The receptionist repeated it. And Solana's entire world stopped. Upstairs in her new office, still adjusting to having walls instead of cubicle partitions, still feeling like an imposter every time she sat in the leather chair, Solana's blood turned to ice. Tell him I'm not here. Her voice came out strangled. He says it's urgent, Miss Coleman. I don't care what he says. Tell him I'm not available. Tell him I left. Tell him anything. She slammed the phone down, hands shaking so violently she had to clasp them together to make it stop. Garrett was here. In Austin. In this building. Her wolf began to pace, not in anticipation, but in trapped animal panic. 5 minutes passed. 10. Then her cell phone buzzed. Unknown number. She stared at it, knowing exactly who it was, knowing she shouldn't answer. Her thumb hit the accept button anyway. Hello? Her voice barely qualified as a whisper. Hello, Solana? Garrett's voice slid through the phone like oil, smooth, controlled, the auditory equivalent of a knife pressed gently against your throat. Long time. Garrett. She couldn't make herself say anything else. Miss me? What do you want? What I've always wanted. A pause loaded with meaning. You. I'm not coming back. I'm not asking you to come back. That terrible patience in his tone. I'm in Austin. Downstairs in your building, actually. We should talk. Face to face, like adults. There's nothing to talk about. Oh, I think there is. His voice dropped, intimate and threatening. I heard some interesting things, Solana. About you and Abel Leo, the Alpha King of Texas. That's quite the step up from Ohio pack trash, isn't it? Her stomach twisted. He knows what I am. Does he? Genuine curiosity. Does he know your half-blood lunar lineage? That's impressive. But does he know what you did? Her throat closed. I didn't do anything. That's not what the pack says. That's not what the official record shows. Far as anyone in Ohio knows, you murdered my brother in cold blood and fled before justice could be served. That's a lie. Is it? Garrett's voice hardened. Then come back. Face the pack council. Clear your name. If you're innocent, you have nothing to fear. I'm not falling for that. The council would execute me before I finished talking. Probably. He said it so casually. But that's what happens to wolves who kill without cause. You know the law. Tears burned behind Solana's eyes. Kieran attacked me. I defended myself. Your word against a dead wolf's reputation, and Kieran was well liked. You're disposable half-blood, who nobody wanted anyway. The cruelty in his voice was almost gentle. So here's your choice, Solana. Meet me tonight. We talk. Maybe I decide to let this go. Maybe I go home and tell everyone you're dead. Or I pay a visit to Abel Leo and tell him everything. Show him the pack records, the warrant for your arrest, the testimony from 12 wolves who saw you standing over Kieran's body, covered in his blood. Garrett paused. How do you think your Alpha King will feel about his new mate being a murderer? Her breath came in short, sharp gasps. He won't believe you. Won't he? I'll bring documentation, witnesses, official pack seals. What will you bring? Tears and excuses? His laugh was soft, vicious. Meet me tonight. 8 o'clock. Rusty spoke on East 6th. Come alone. We'll talk. And maybe, I'll give you a chance to explain before I ruin everything you're trying to build here. The line went dead. Solana sat frozen, phone pressed to her ear, listening to silence. She didn't tell Abel. Couldn't. Because what Garrett was threatening to reveal wasn't just a lie about her past. It was a truth she'd buried so deep she'd almost convinced herself it hadn't happened. Kieran Thorne had cornered her after a pack meeting 3 years ago, told her she was wasting her potential, hiding in the back of the pack hierarchy, said a half-blood with lunar lineage could go far with the right wolf protecting her, said he'd chosen her. When she refused, he'd stopped asking. His hands on her throat, his weight pinning her against the wall of the pack house basement. His breath hot against her ear as he told her to stop fighting, that she'd thank him later, that nobody would believe her anyway. Her wolf had taken over. Not a conscious decision, pure survival instinct. When she came back to herself, Kieran was on the ground with his throat torn out and she was covered in his blood. She'd run that night, didn't pack, didn't say goodbye, just got in her car and drove until Ohio was a memory. And now Garrett, Kieran's brother, the one person in the world with the most reason to want her dead, was here, offering to talk. Solana knew it was a trap. But she also knew she couldn't let him get to Abel first. At 7:45 p.m., Solana parked her Honda outside the Rusty Spoke, a dive bar that looked like it survived on three things: cheap beer, poor decisions, and customers who didn't ask questions. Neon sign flickering, windows so grimy you couldn't see inside. The smell of stale alcohol and cigarette smoke clinging to the walls. She walked in. Garrett was waiting in a corner booth, whiskey in front of him, posture relaxed like he'd been here 100 times before. When he saw her, his smile was everything she remembered and feared. There she is. He gestured to the seat across from him. My little runaway. I'm not yours. She stayed standing. Sit down, Solana. I'll stand. Sit down. The command in his voice hit her. Wolf. Made it whimper. She sat, hated herself for it. Garrett studied her like a specimen under glass. Austin suits you. You look healthier, less haunted. Almost happy. He took a sip of whiskey. Shame it won't last. What do you want, Garrett? I want you to come home. That's not my home anymore. It's the only home you've got. Your Northern Ohio pack, born and raised, blood and bonds. You can't just walk away from that. I rejected the pack. You can't reject blood. He leaned forward. You think you can run to Texas, get a corporate job, pretend you're human? You think Abel Leo's going to protect you when he finds out what you really are? He knows what I am. He knows you're half-blood. Does he know you're a killer? Her hands clenched into fists under the table. I'm not going back. Then I'll tell Abel everything. Go ahead. Garrett's eyes narrowed dangerously. You think he'll still want you? Still claim you as his mate when I show him the pack records? When I bring witnesses who'll testify you murdered my brother in cold blood? Solana's breath caught, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. Kieran attacked me. I defended myself. That's your story. Mine is that you seduced him, led him on, then killed him when he rejected you for a real wolf. Garrett's smile was poison. 12 pack members heard the fight, saw you standing over his body, saw the blood. Who do you think they'll believe, you or me? Tears burned, but she refused to let them fall. Why are you doing this? Because you're mine, Solana. He said it like stating a fact. You were mine before Kieran touched you. You're mine now, and I don't let go of what belongs to me. She stood abruptly. I'd rather die than be yours. Garrett stood too, faster, grabbed her wrist hard enough to bruise. That can be arranged, but first I'll make sure Abel Leo watches you burn. I'll destroy everything you've built here, make you watch him reject you before I drag you back to Ohio. Solana yanked her arm free, stumbled backward toward the door. Stay away from me. 3 days, Solana, 3 days to decide. Come back with me willingly, or I go to Abel and end this charade. His smile was the cruelest thing she'd ever seen. Your choice. She ran. Out of the bar, into her car, drove until the neon lights disappeared behind her. And when she got back to her apartment, she pulled out a duffel bag and started packing. because running was all she'd ever known. It was all she was good at. And this time, she'd run far enough that Garrett Thorne would never find her. But Abel Leo had been watching. He'd followed Garrett from the moment the beta walked into his building. He'd tracked Solana to that dive bar and waited outside, wolf pacing, every instinct screaming at him to intervene. And when she ran out looking shattered, when he saw the fear in her eyes, Abel made a decision. He wasn't letting Garrett Thorne take his mate. Not now, not ever. And if that meant going to war with the Northern Ohio Pack, then war it would be. Chapter 6. Abel was waiting for her. Solana opened her apartment door at 10:47 p.m. Duffel bag packed with everything she could carry, keys in hand, ready to vanish into the night, the way she'd done 100 times before, and froze. Abel. Leo sat on her thrift store couch like he belonged there, still wearing the dark jeans and black t-shirt from earlier. No jacket. Arms resting along the back of the couch. Completely relaxed except for his eyes. Molten gold and locked on her with an intensity that made her knees weak. The duffel bag slipped from her fingers and hit the floor with a dull thud. "How did you get in here?" Her voice came out strangled. "I'm an alpha. Locks are more like suggestions. Get out." "No." Her hands started shaking. "Abel, please." "Who was that man?" His voice was too calm, the kind of calm that came before violence. She couldn't answer, couldn't move. "The one you met at the bar," Abel continued, standing now, uncoiling from the couch with predatory grace. "The one who made you look like someone had just told you the world was ending. Who is he?" "That's none of your business." Abel's jaw tightened. "Wrong answer. I don't owe you explanations." "Yes, you do." He took a step toward her. "Because you're my mate, whether you've accepted it or not, and someone just threatened you." Her breath caught. "How do you—" "I followed you." Solana's eyes went wide. "You what?" "I've been following you since that man walked into my building 3 days ago. Had someone track his rental car, ran his ID. Garrett Thorne, beta of the Northern Ohio Pack, wanted in 2 states for assault, has connections to organized crime." Abel's voice dropped lower. "Dangerous. And he cornered you in a dive bar and said something that made you run here and pack a bag." "You had no right." "I had every right." The words came out as a roar that shook the cheap walls. "You think I'm going to stand by while some piece of trash from your past shows up in my city, walks into my building, and threatens my mate? I'm not your mate." "Yes, you are." Abel closed the distance between them in 3 strides. "You felt it the second we met. You feel it every time I'm near you. Your wolf recognizes mine, and it's tearing you apart trying to fight it." "You don't understand." "Then make me understand." His hands came up, not touching her, just hovering near her shoulders, like he was physically restraining himself from reaching out. "Stop running from me and talk to me." And Solana broke. 3 years of holding it together. 3 years of pretending she was fine. She was safe. She could handle it alone. 3 years of carrying weight that was crushing her from the inside out. It all came apart. "I killed someone." The words ripped out of her like they'd been clawed from her chest. "I killed someone, and I ran, and now Garrett's here, and he's going to tell you, and you're going to hate me just like everyone else, and I can't do this again." She was sobbing. Ugly, gasping sobs that made her whole body shake. Abel pulled her into his arms. Not gently, not carefully. He wrapped her up like he could physically hold her together through sheer force of will. "Tell me," he said against her hair. "Tell me everything." And Solana did. She told him about Kieran Thorne, Garrett's younger brother. The golden boy of the Northern Ohio Pack. Charming, handsome, destined for greatness according to everyone who mattered. She told him about the pack meeting 3 years ago. How Kieran had cornered her in the basement afterward when everyone else had gone home. How he'd smiled and said he'd been watching her. How he'd told her she was wasting her potential, hiding in the back of the pack hierarchy, when she could have power, protection, a real place in the pack. All she had to do was accept his bond. I said no, Solana whispered against Abel's chest. I told him I wasn't interested, that I didn't want a mate, especially not him. And he didn't accept that. He laughed. Her voice cracked. Said I didn't have a choice. That half-bloods didn't get to reject wolves with real lineage. That I should be grateful he was offering instead of just taking. Abel's arms tightened around her. She felt his wolf rising, felt the vibration of a growl building in his chest. He grabbed me, pinned me against the wall, his hand on my throat, his body. She couldn't finish that sentence. Didn't need to. What happened next? Abel's voice was deadly quiet. My wolf took over. I don't remember making the decision. One second I was terrified and the next I was… She pulled back just enough to look at Abel's face. When I came back to myself, Kieran was on the ground. His throat was torn out. There was so much blood. On the walls, on the floor, on me. Self-defense. That's what I tried to tell them. Tears streamed down her face. But Garrett found us. He saw his brother dead, and me standing over the body covered in blood, and he decided what happened. Said I'd seduced Kieran, that I'd led him on and killed him when he tried to claim me. 12 pack members testified they'd heard us fighting, heard me scream, but Garrett twisted it, made it sound like I'd attacked Kieran unprovoked. And the pack believed him. Garrett's family has power. I'm nobody. Half-blood from a mother who died when I was 6, and a father who disappeared before I was born. Who are they going to believe? Abel's eyes blazed. So they tried to execute you. The Alpha ordered it. Public execution. 3 days. I ran that night. Didn't pack anything except what I could grab in 5 minutes. Just drove. Kept driving until I hit Austin and ran out of gas and money. And now Garrett's found you. He says if I don't go back with him, he'll tell you everything. Show you the pack records. Bring witnesses. Make you believe I'm a murderer. Her voice broke. And you'll reject me, because why would an alpha king want a mate with blood on her hands? Abel was silent for a long moment. Then he cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. You're under my protection now, he said, each word deliberate, final. Mine, my pack, my territory. If Garrett comes for you, I'll be the one standing in his way. He'll challenge you. Good. Abel's smile was all teeth. I've been looking for an excuse to remind everyone why I'm the Alpha King of Texas. Despite the fear, despite the tears, Solana laughed, wet and broken. You're completely insane. Probably. His thumbs brushed away her tears. But I'm also in love with you. The world stopped. I've been in love with you since that parking lot, Abel continued. Since you stole my spot and told me to deal with it. Since you looked at me like I was just some guy and not someone to be feared or used. You saw me, Solana. Not the alpha, not the CEO, just me. Abel. You don't have to say it back, but you need to know, you're not alone anymore. You're not running anymore. His voice dropped to something fierce and tender. You're home. And something inside Solana that had been frozen for 3 years finally cracked open. She reached up, threaded her fingers into his hair, and pulled him down until their foreheads touched. I'm terrified, she whispered. So am I. You're an alpha king. You're not scared of anything. I'm terrified of you, Abel said, because for the first time in my life, I have something to lose. Someone who matters more than power or territory or anything else. Her wolf howled in recognition. Her heart cracked wide open. And Solana kissed him. Not gentle, not tentative. She kissed him like he was oxygen, and she'd been drowning for 3 years. Abel responded instantly, one hand tangling in her hair, the other pulling her impossibly closer, kissing her like he could pour every promise he'd just made directly into her soul. When the kiss ended and they stood there catching their breath, Solana met his eyes, tears clinging to her lashes, and a hope blooming she'd sworn she would never feel that again. I'm still scared, she admitted. Then be scared, Abel said. But be scared here, with me, because I'm not letting you go. And for the first time since that night 3 years ago, Solana stopped running. But outside her apartment building, Garrett Thorne sat in his rental car, watching the lights in Solana's window. He'd followed her from the bar, watched Abel Leo walk into her building 30 minutes later, and now he pulled out his phone and made a call. "Get the pack council on the line," he said. "Tell them I found the murderer, and she's hiding under the protection of the Texas Alpha King. This just became a territorial dispute." He smiled in the darkness. "Let's see how much Abel Leo really loves her when starting a war is the price." Chapter 7. The challenge came at 9:47 a.m. on a Saturday morning. Public, formal, designed to humiliate. Garrett Thorne stood outside Leo Global's glass headquarters with 11 wolves from the Northern Ohio pack flanking him like an honor guard. All in human form. All wearing suits that looked expensive and out of place. All radiating the kind of controlled violence that made civilians cross the street without knowing why. In Garrett's hand was a white flag. Not surrender, but the ancient symbol of formal alpha challenge. Security spotted them first, called it in. Within 3 minutes, every monitor in the building showed the live feed from the front entrance. By the time Abel reached the lobby, 200 employees were pressed against windows on 12 different floors watching. Solana was 3 steps behind him, heart slamming against her ribs hard enough to crack bone. "Don't do this," she said, grabbing his arm. "Abel, please." "I have to." His voice was calm. Too calm. "He'll kill you." Abel turned, cupped her face with both hands. "No, he won't. Trust me." Then he walked through the revolving doors into the Austin heat. Garrett's smile was everything Solana remembered and hated. Cold, confident, the expression of someone who'd already decided how this ended. "Alpha King," Garrett said, inclining his head in mock respect. "Thank you for seeing me." "Cut the performance, Thorne. What do you want?" "A challenge." Garrett raised the white flag higher. "You, me, the old way. Traditional rules, witnessed by both packs." Abel's eyes flashed gold. "For what stakes?" "For her." Garrett pointed directly at Solana, where she stood just inside the glass doors, visible to everyone. "Solana Coleman. She's a fugitive from Northern Ohio Pack Justice. She murdered my brother. I'm here to bring her home for execution." The watching crowd erupted in whispers. Abel's voice cut through them like a blade. "She's innocent." "That's your opinion. Pack law says otherwise. She killed a full-blood wolf, fled before trial. That's execution-worthy in every territory in North America." Garrett's smile widened. "Unless you're claiming her under your protection, in which case you're harboring a known criminal. That's grounds for territorial challenge. She's under my protection, and she's my mate." Abel said it loud enough for every wolf in a 3-block radius to hear. "Which means she's under the protection of the Southwest Territories. Touch her, and you're declaring war." "Then let's settle this the traditional way." Garrett drove the white flag into the ground between them. "You and me. Neutral ground, midnight tonight. Fight to submission. Winner takes Solana Coleman." Every wolf watching understood what that meant. Solana would go to whoever won. Like property. Like a prize. She shoved through the doors. "No, absolutely not. I'm not." "You don't have a choice," Garrett said without even looking at her. "Pack law. When an alpha's claim is challenged, the challenge must be answered. The female doesn't get a vote." "That's barbaric." "That's tradition." Garrett's eyes finally shifted to her. "And you know it. You grew up in a pack. You know how this works." Abel stepped between them, blocking Garrett's view of Solana entirely. "I accept your challenge." "Abel, no." "It's done." Abel's voice was absolute, final. "Midnight. The old foundry off Highway 71. Bring your witnesses, I'll bring mine." Garrett pulled the white flag from the ground. "See you tonight, Alpha King." Let's hope you're as strong as they say. He turned and walked away, his 11 wolves falling into formation around him. The crowd that had gathered, employees, passers-by, wolves who'd felt the challenge energy and come running, slowly dispersed. But everyone knew. By sunset, every supernatural creature in Texas would know. The Alpha King was fighting for his mate. Solana didn't speak to Abel for 3 hours. She locked herself in her office and tried to work, tried to think, tried to find any solution that didn't end with Abel bleeding out on concrete because of her. At 2 p.m., Abel walked in without knocking. "You can't do this," Solana said before he could speak. "It's already done." "Then undo it. Tell him you changed your mind. Tell him—" "I can't." Abel sat on the edge of her desk. "The challenge has been issued and accepted. Backing out now means forfeiting, which means Garrett takes you back to Ohio." "Then let him." Abel's eyes blazed. "No. I'm not worth starting a war over." "Yes, you are." He reached out, caught her hand. "And this isn't a war. It's a challenge. One fight, clean, witnessed, legal under every pack law in existence. Garrett's brutal, Abel. He's trained for this his whole life. He's weaker than me." Abel said it like stating a fact. "I've been Alpha King for 8 years, Solana. I didn't get this position because I'm diplomatic. I got it because I'm the strongest wolf in the Southwest Territories, and I'm not losing to some beta with anger issues and an inferiority complex. What if you're wrong? I'm not. But what if—" Abel stood, pulled her up, and kissed her. Hard, possessive, a claiming that left no room for doubt. When he pulled back, his eyes were molten gold. "I'm not losing you, not to Garrett, not to anyone. Understand?" Solana's throat closed. She nodded. "Good. Now get ready. You're coming with me tonight." "What?" "You need to see this. Need to watch me win. Because after tonight, you're never going to doubt again that you're mine." Midnight came too fast. The old foundry was exactly what it sounded like. An abandoned industrial complex on the edge of Austin, where metal had been forged and poured decades ago. Now it was just rusted equipment, broken windows, and concrete floors stained with oil and time. Perfect neutral ground. 2 packs gathered. On one side, Garrett's 11 Ohio wolves, cold, silent, disciplined. On the other, Abel's Southwest Territories pack, 43 wolves who dropped everything to be here, to witness, to support their alpha. Solana stood with them, surrounded by wolves she'd never met who treated her like she already belonged. In the center of the space, lit by industrial work lights someone had rigged, stood Abel and Garrett. Both had stripped to jeans, no shirts, no shoes, nothing but skin and muscle and barely restrained violence. "Last chance to forfeit," Garrett called across the space. "Walk away. Let me take her home. Nobody has to get hurt." "Not happening." Abel's voice carried absolute certainty. "Your funeral," Garrett smiled. "When I'm done with you, I'm going to make her watch while I drag her back to Ohio in chains." Abel's eyes flashed pure gold. "You'll be dead before you touch her." "We'll see." Someone, one of the Ohio pack, stepped forward. "Traditional challenge rules. Fight until one submits or dies. No interference. No weapons. Witnessed by both packs. Do both alphas accept these terms?" "Accepted," Garrett said. "Accepted," Abel echoed. "Then begin." Garrett shifted first. His wolf was massive, black as midnight, easily 250 pounds of muscle and teeth, lips pulled back in a snarl that showed every fang. Abel shifted half a second later. And his wolf was bigger. Silver gray with eyes like liquid gold, 300 pounds easy, moving with the kind of lethal grace that came from absolute confidence. This wasn't Abel's first challenge. And it showed. The 2 wolves circled, testing, reading. Then Garrett lunged. Fast, vicious, going straight for Abel's throat. Abel dodged left, twisted, caught Garrett's shoulder in his jaws, and threw him. Garrett hit a concrete pillar, hard enough to crack it, scrambled back up, charged again. This time, Abel met him head-on. The collision was thunder. Blood sprayed across concrete. Teeth flashed in the work lights. Claws raked and tore. Garrett fought like someone with nothing to lose. Wild, brutal, aiming to maim. But Abel fought like someone who'd already won. Every move calculated, every strike deliberate. He wasn't trying to kill Garrett. He was trying to break him. Garrett got his teeth into Abel's shoulder. Bit down, drew blood. Abel snarled, and in one motion, twisted, flipped Garrett over his back, and pinned him to the concrete with jaws around his throat. Not biting, just holding. Showing dominance. Proving who was stronger. Garrett thrashed, clawed at Abel's chest, drew 3 parallel gashes that bled freely. Abel didn't let go. Just squeezed tighter. And that's when Solana saw it. Garrett's eyes widening, fear replacing confidence. He was losing. Garrett shifted tactics, went for Abel's legs, tried to break the hold. Abel released his throat and shifted. Not fully human. Not fully wolf. Alpha hybrid form. 7 feet of muscle and fury. Claws like curved blades. Face caught between human and wolf. Eyes burning with power that made every wolf watching take an involuntary step back. Hybrid form was legend, reserved for the strongest alphas. Solana had never seen it in person. It was terrifying. It was beautiful. Garrett froze. Because hybrid form meant Abel wasn't just fighting for territory or pride. He was claiming Solana in front of every witness, making it permanent, unbreakable. Last chance, Abel growled in a voice that barely sounded human. Submit. Garrett's wolf snarled, but the sound was hollow, desperate. He lunged anyway. Abel caught him by the throat mid-leap, lifted him off the ground, and squeezed. She is mine. Garrett's wolf thrashed, claws raked uselessly against Abel's arm, drawing blood that Abel didn't even seem to feel. Say it. Garrett's eyes were rolling back, choking, dying. Say you yield or I crush your windpipe. For one terrible second, Solana thought Garrett would choose death. Then, barely audible, more whimper than word, I yield. Abel held him there for 3 more seconds, making sure every wolf in both packs heard it. Then he threw Garrett across the foundry. Garrett hit the far wall, shifted back to human form mid-flight, collapsed in a heap of broken pride and bruised ribs. The silence was absolute. Then, slowly, the Southwest Territory's wolves began to kneel. One by one. Heads bowed. Acknowledging their alpha's victory. Acknowledging his claim. Even the Ohio pack knelt. Ritual demanded it. The winner commanded respect, regardless of territory. Abel shifted back to human form, breathing hard. Blood streaming from the shoulder wound and the gashes across his chest. But standing. Victorious. His eyes found Solana across the space. She ran to him. Didn't care about the blood, the violence, the watching crowd. Just threw herself into his arms and held on. You're completely insane, she sobbed against his chest. Probably. Abel's arms came around her, unbreakable. But you're worth it. Garrett's pack collected him 30 minutes later. They left Austin in silence. Solana never saw him again. And for the first time in 3 years, she stopped waiting for someone to drag her back into the nightmare. Because Abel Leo had just made it impossible. But what Solana didn't know was that hybrid form came with consequences. When an alpha claimed a mate in hybrid form in front of witnesses, the bond became permanent, unbreakable, soul deep. And in 72 hours, Solana Coleman would feel exactly what that meant. Chapter 8. 3 months later. Solana stood on the rooftop of Leo Global Enterprises, staring out at downtown Austin like she was trying to memorize it. The city sprawled beneath her, lights bleeding into the night sky, music from 6th Street drifting up in faint waves, the autumn breeze finally cutting through the Texas heat that had clung to her skin for months. 3 months ago, she was sleeping in a motel that smelled like mildew and regret, eating ramen because it was all she could afford, praying her car wouldn't die on the side of I-35 and leave her stranded. She'd been running, always running, from her father's expectations, from the half-blood label that followed her everywhere, from the belief that she'd never be enough for anyone. And now she was the senior financial strategist for a multi-billion-dollar company, living in a penthouse she still couldn't believe was hers, and apparently bonded for life to an alpha king who looked at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. The door behind her opened. She didn't turn. She already knew it was him. Could feel him in the bond, that invisible thread that hummed between them like a live wire. Abel stepped beside her, holding 2 glasses of wine. He handed her one without a word, his shoulder brushing hers as they stood together in the silence. "You okay?" he asked finally. "Yeah." She smiled, but it was the kind of smile that carried weight. "Just thinking." "About?" "How 3 months ago I was nobody, and now I'm here." Abel didn't respond right away. He just watched her, the way he always did, like he was reading every thought she didn't say out loud. Then he pulled something from his pocket, a small velvet box. Her breath caught. "Technically," Abel said, his voice low and steady, "you're not dating the CEO anymore." Solana's heart slammed against her ribs. "Abel!" He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, the stone catching the moonlight like it had been carved from it. "You're engaged to him," Abel said. Her hand started shaking. "I know it's fast," he continued, his eyes locked on hers. "I know we've only known each other 3 months, but I've spent my entire life waiting for you, Solana Coleman, and I don't want to wait anymore." Tears burned her eyes, blurred her vision. She tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. "You don't have to answer now," Abel said quickly, like he was afraid he'd pushed too hard. "You can take all the time you—" "Yes." He froze. "Yes? Yes, you idiot!" She laughed through the tears, the sound breaking and beautiful all at once. "Yes, I'll marry you." The smile that spread across his face was the kind that changed everything. He slid the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms and kissed her. Deep and desperate, and full of every promise he'd ever made. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Solana rested her forehead against his. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too. Even though I stole your parking spot?" Abel laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. "Especially because you stole my parking spot." 6 months later, they were married. Not in some grand cathedral with marble floors and stained glass, not in a fancy venue with overpriced flowers and a guest list full of people who didn't matter. They got married in that same Kroger parking lot where it all started, under the stars, surrounded by pack, surrounded by family, the same asphalt where she'd backed into his Aston Martin and changed both their lives forever. And when Abel kissed his bride, the wolves howled, not in mourning, not in warning, but in celebration, because the Alpha King had found his queen. And Solana Coleman, the half-blood runaway, who thought she'd never be enough, realized she'd been enough all along. She just needed someone to see it. That's the story. The CEO Alpha who crashed her bumper. The girl who stole a parking spot and accidentally stole a king's heart. The love that started with a fight and ended with forever. So, here's what I need from you. If this story made you feel anything, if it made you laugh, made you cry, made you forget about the world for 50 minutes, then comment below and tell me where you're watching from. California, Toronto, London, Sydney? I want to know. Because stories like this connect us. They remind us that no matter where we are, we all want the same thing. To be seen, to be loved, to be enough. If you made it all the way to the end, you're part of this pack now. Hit that subscribe button for Gracie Werewolf Story Bank. Turn on notifications. Share this with someone who needs a good story. And stick around because we've got more tales coming, more alphas, more mates, more love stories that'll wreck you in the best way. But real talk, if you didn't subscribe, I need to know why. Drop a comment. Tell me what's holding you back. The length? The pacing? You just don't like werewolves? I genuinely want to know because I'm here to tell stories you actually want to hear. Thanks for listening. Thanks for letting me take you on this ride. And remember, sometimes the best things in life start with a stolen parking spot and a man who refuses to let you run. Until next time, see you in the next one.